All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Kabbalah Café. So this is our weekly look at all things spiritual and mystical, the best way, in my not at all jaded opinion, to get the week started. So let's talk about Kabbalah. Specifically, the focus today is on names, which I think is significant when we talk about birthdays, because, we talk about birth, that is always associated with giving a name. And I mentioned this is like a kind of like a cross collab. This is where, your favorite folks from Friends show up on Seinfeld and vice versa. Anyway, we were talking about in the Wednesday class, the Wednesday JLI class, Fascinating Facts, all about life cycles. And we spoke about birth and naming and all that, all those ideas. And the two are connected. Birth and naming. You typically give a name to a child. When they're born or shortly after they're born. And there's a lot of significance. And today we're going to explore the mystical significance of a name. But before I do that, I do want to speak about souls, because the two are connected. Names and souls are very much connected. So as we know, we're going to start from the beginning, but not really the beginning, but let's take a half a step back. So life is a composite of body and soul. If you're missing one without the other, then you don't have life at least the way we are consciously currently experiencing life. So if you have just the soul without a body, the soul is alive, don't get me wrong, but doesn't look like this. If you have just a body without a soul, that also doesn't look like this. So this is body and soul working together. Now, you could not find two more opposite dynamics. You couldn't find. I know they had a show called The Odd Couple. I think it was a show. I don't know exactly. Yeah, it was a show. Great. I don't know what The Odd Couple was. Was it opposites that were kind of, yeah?
One was a slob. It's very sloppy.
All right.
It's a neat nick.
All right. You could not find any bigger opposites than body and soul, notwithstanding Odd Couple and whatever. Two human beings are still of the same genre. The body is of the earth. The soul is of heaven. You cannot find two more opposites. To put them together and expect them to work together, God has got to be laughing somewhere. Good luck. See how this experiment works out. But that is what life is. Life is this grand experiment of a soul working with the body. The soul is earmarked for a body. The body is earmarked for the soul. They're perfectly matched to drive each other crazy, but also to be able to work together ultimately. So something I've shared many times before in these classes, everyone has their vices, their challenges, their temptations, whatever. And the soul, your soul, is perfectly designed to stand up to be able to, deal with that. But it's definitely easier to deal with someone else's stuff. That's why it's very easy for us to solve other people's problems. Our own problems, well, there's always tomorrow, right? Like we tell ourselves, well, I'll work on that tomorrow. But what about the other guy's stuff? They really need to, I have an action plan here for them, ready to go, ready to roll out. I meet someone before I even know their name. I've already got them figured out, what their problems are and how to fix it. When it comes to ourselves, I notice it, I don't notice it tomorrow. But the point is that our souls are really designed to be matched with our bodies. And thus, it is really about dealing with what it is that we need to deal with. It's easy to deal with someone else's stuff, but it's more important, and it's really our calling to deal with our own stuff. So that's a little bit of a general introduction. Now, part of what helps channel the soul into the body is the name. Now, one example of this is brought in Kabbalah is this idea, this truth, that when a person faints, God forbid, one way to get them out of the faint is by whispering their name into their ear. I've never tried it, but this is what Kabbalah says, that you can actually revive them by calling their name. Why? Because the name almost draws the soul. So, and I quoted this Wednesday in the class, a soul without a body doesn't need a name. A soul above in heaven doesn't have a name, doesn't need a name, doesn't want a name. What kind of name, right? If anything, it's soul coming from God. That's all it needs. A body without a soul also doesn't need a name. What kind of name does a body need without a soul? It's only when soul comes into the body, that's when names become important. And the name is almost like a channel, like a cable, like a channel, not like a channel. And I said cable and channel, not cable channel. This is not like, the name is like the channel, right? The pipeline that draws the energy, the life of the soul into the body. That's why when someone is in a state of faint, which means that the soul is like a little bit displaced out of the body, as it were, even in a minute fashion. So a way to bring the soul back into the body in a conscious way is by calling the name. The name kind of reinfuses the soul. By the way, in a similar way, the Talmud says about sleep, that sleep is 1/60th of death. What does that mean? When we're sleeping, we're not so consciously aware of things. Yes, we might be dreaming, and obviously we're alive, but it's a taste of death, meaning the soul is not fully, consciously working and integrated with the body. In a similar way, a faint state, and one way to draw that back is through calling the name. So names are very important. Now, in Kabbalah, it speaks about Hebrew names, right? It speaks about the power of Hebrew names because that's obviously the context in Kabbalah. In Hebrew, you also have another fascinating element, and I think it's very important. Every language is made up of characters. So in the English alphabet, how many characters do we have? 26. In Hebrew, how many characters do we have? 22. Excellent. So we have 26 in English, 22 in Hebrew. I feel like I'm bidding down. Like, how many can we get for 18? No, so there's different characters. Now, in the Chinese dialect, there's tens of thousands. I think there's upwards of like 40, 50,000 characters. That's a lot of school. That's a lot of flashcards. I mean, for 26, I remember like, all right, what are we doing here? Right? That's a long episode of Sesame Street. That's a lot of learning. I'm just trying to see what sticks here. So the point is like this, that language is comprised of characters. Now, typically, there's no significance to the character itself. So I'm going to hold up this book. This is the book that we're learning. So it's called All for the English title is All for the Sake of Heaven. I'm looking at the word heaven. Let's just say heaven. 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 Okay? I feel like I'm in the spelling bee. So now heaven. So is there significance to the H or to the E or to the A or to the V or to the E or to the N vis-a-vis what it's referring to? I would say no. Does my question make sense? And my answer? In other words, these letters don't actually contain the energy of heaven. It's just letters that when combined make the word heaven that we associate with that thing called heaven. But it's not like the letters are actually bespeaking the energy. It's not like the H. Oh, the H. Oh, let me tell you about the H. 2 sticks and a horizontal line. Oh, that's of course heaven. Of course, that has to be the first letter of heaven. You look at me like I'm crazy. And you might be right. But in Hebrew, it's very different. In Hebrew, the letters, the shape of the letters are significant. We've done classes in the past about the shapes of the letters. Every letter has a shape, and every shape is significant. So there's meta messages inside the letters. It's not just utilitarian. When you take a few letters, combine them together, and read them, it makes a word, and the word really also doesn't mean anything, but the word represents a concept, and the concept, that's what means something. But it's like a medium to an end. It's like a means to an end. No. In Hebrew, every letter, the individual letter, has a meaning. First of all, literally every letter means something. Aleph. Aleph means a leader. Bet, bayit means house. Every letter in the Aleph Bet in the Hebrew language, every letter means something. Every letter, the shape of every letter is highly significant. And in addition, every letter corresponds to a number that we know as gematria, numerology. So we're not going to go into all this today. I just want to share the concept that Hebrew is a very unique language. That's why it's called Lashon Kodesh, the holy tongue. That's why it's the language of creation. How did God create the world? Using Hebrew language. Hebrew language. See, there's different types of languages. There are languages made by creation, and then there are languages, then there is a language that makes creation. Two completely different realities. One is a product of creation. In other words, people exist. People have a need to communicate. So people invent languages with which they can converse with each other. That's most languages. Hebrew is not a byproduct of life. Hebrew is the language that creates life. And so the Hebrew is highly significant. The name is highly significant. So the Midrash says that one of the first things that Adam did, Adam, like Adam and Eve, Adam, right? So one of the first things Adam did was he named the animals. And you're thinking, naming animals? He must have had a lot of time on his hands. Like, see, naming animals, like, who cares? Cow, sheep, right? Horse, done. What else? Now, does cow mean something for the cow? No, it's just what we call it in English. But why did Adam say the Kabbalist? Hey, Sentry, good to see you. Welcome, welcome. So explain the Kabbalist. Sandrine, it's David's birthday today. So we're celebrating together. Huh? Oh, right. Different David. So Adam spent time naming the animals because by doing so, he was getting in touch with the spirit of the animal. Because if you cannot name something in Hebrew, certainly, until you know the energy and the spirit of that thing. So Adam, by the measures telling us that Adam named all the animals, it's not telling us that he just spent his time naming animals. Duck, bird, pigeon, like seriously, what is that? No, he was channeling, he was getting in touch with the spirit of the animals. And thus, when you do so, the name is obvious, which leads the mystics to the following conclusion. Again, I shared this past Wednesday in the Fascinating Fast class. That although and I wrote about this in the email last night, although prophecy has been pretty much taken away for the last 2,500 years, there is an exception. There is a vestige of prophecy that exists when parents name their children. Although they think they might be naming it for this one, for that one, for this reason, that reason, whatever, and that might be true. But there's a deeper thing that's driving it. The naming of a child is driven by a sense of prophecy and identifying the soul energy of that person. And thus the name that's associated with that person, with that soul, is the one that is appropriate to channel its energy into the body. It's an amazing concept. It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing taste of prophecy. All of us have a name, right? Maybe even a Hebrew name. And that name, right, carries a huge spiritual meaning to it. So that's a little bit about names. So what we're going to do today is jump into our text much earlier than we usually do, mind you, because there's a lot of other text that I want to get into, but we first need to analyze the text that will be passed around in front of us all. All right, so here we go. Ellen, please take and pass. Tova, please take and pass. There will be some extras, but no worries. Okay, here we go. So we are on page, well, in the booklets, it's page marked 28, but it's really the first page. We started reading last week. We did the first 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs, and we're up to now warranted deceit. Oh, that sounds very, very fancy. I'm going to share the text online. Here we go. All right, so page 28. Toward the bottom of the page where it says warranted deceit. So I'll just quickly review what we explored last week. Last week, we quoted a verse from Psalms where King David talks about his soul being redeemed in peace. And we explained that there's 2 types of redemption, meaning 2 types of victory. One victory that is the product of destroying the enemy, and the other one is a victory that's the product of reconciling with the enemy and turning it into an ally. And that is the idea of redeemed in peace, meaning that at the end, what reigns is kind of a harmony and a peace. And I explained that on a more personal level, this is a reference to the concept that we all have different forces inside of us, dueling or conflicting forces, higher self, lower self, good inclination, not so good inclination, etc. And together with that, we also have the physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual aspects, those four worlds inside of us. And we can go through life and be in a state of disharmony. The goal is to harmonize. The goal is to harmonize our internal factors, right? Both the higher self and lower self should work together for a common goal. Emotions, intellect, physical, spiritual should all also work together. All of that was last week. That's all kind of the first four paragraphs. But today we talk about names, and the specific context is going to be the Jacob, Israel, Yaakov, Yisrael duality. So I'm going to read, and then we're going to get, I also have another handout to pass around. That's also going to be some very important supplementary information. But let's start here. So to understand this, meaning to understand the concept of achieving harmony both within and without, this idea of peaceful redemption as opposed to redemption that comes through, just destroying the other. So to understand this, it is first necessary to present an explanation of the verse, your name shall no longer be called Yaakov or Jacob, but rather Yisrael or Israel, for you have striven. Now that's a quote straight from the book of Genesis, specifically as we see in footnote number 8. It comes from Genesis 32:29. Look at that. I can read footnotes as well amongst my many talents. All right. So here we go. So that is the verse. So God, and just to explain what's the context of this, the context is this is after the wrestling match between Jacob and the angel. You remember that, the story? Right. So Jacob. So let's go back to the beginning. Adam and Eve. I'm kidding. So we have Jacob, who runs away from home because his twin brother Esau wants to kill him. Why does he want to kill him? Because he took the blessings that were earmarked for the older twin Esau. Great. So now he has to head out of Dodge for a little while till his brother cools down. So he goes to his Uncle Laban, who turns out to be a trickster, even to his own nephew. He's trying to work a deal. He's trying to swindle him at every turn. He ends up spending 20 plus years away from home, does Jacob. And in that time, he gets married. He marries a few times. He has a few wives. He has a bunch of kids. He has 11 kids, 12 kids, 11 boys and a girl at this point in time. And he decides it's time to head home. But before he heads home, he sends out kind of a feeler, a messaging feeler to his brother to figure out, like, how does his brother feel about him? This is before social media and WhatsApp. So now you got to find out, you got to send messengers to see, like, now we send a message, but then you had to send a messenger to figure out, how's Esau doing, back at home. And Esau's coming out with 400, he's ready for battle. So Jacob's a little bit anxious. So Jacob prepares for the encounter in 3 different ways. He prays to God, he sends a lot of gifts, and he divides his camp into 2. And he says, look, if Esau attacks one, at least the other one can escape and potentially survive. Well, the Torah tells us that he crosses his family over the Yabok River, maybe Jabok in English, Yabok River, and he then heads back over the river and through the woods. I'm kidding. He heads back over the river. Why? Because he left some things behind. Our sages say, Rashi says, pachim ketanim, small pachim, jugs, vessels. What are pachim? Yeah. Containers, Tupperware. Yeah. He left the leftover cholent from last Shabbat. There was some schnitzel. He's like, I can't leave that there. It's good food. He goes across. And as he's there, the Torah says, the Bible says, Vayevater Yaakov levado, Jacob was alone. Vayeavik ish imo ad alot hashachar. And a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn. That's what it says. Who is this man? It says he's alone, and then it says a man wrestled with him. Okay, that itself is fraught with some difficulty. If someone wrestles with you, you're not alone. I mean, you might be alone vis-a-vis your family. You're the only one of your family, but you're not technically alone. I mean, two people in a boxing ring are not alone. There's two. We can see it. Right? I mean, like there's two people. But it says he's alone, and a man wrestles with him. And we understand, the commentators explain, it wasn't a man, it was an angel. An angel may be assuming the form of a man for that moment, but it was the guardian angel of his twin brother. Yes, everyone has a guardian angel. We'll speak about that Wednesday in our one of the Wednesdays, in maybe I think even this Wednesday in our fascinating fast class. So Esau has a guardian angel, and Jacob wrestles with him, and the angel realizes that he cannot best Jacob. He can't beat him. He says to Jacob in the morning, "Let me go." He hits him on the thigh. He hits him in the thigh and the leg, whatever. He causes him to limp. He says, "Let go. I have to go." So Jacob says, "I'm not going to let you go until you bless me." And so the angel says to him, "What's your name?" Jacob says, Jacob or Yaakov. He says, "Your name is no longer Yaakov, your name is no longer Jacob, but rather your name is Yisrael, Israel." Gives him a name change. A little bit later on, God confirms the name change and also says, "Your name is no longer Jacob, it's Israel." So the angel gives him the new name, God gives him the new name, and that's how the story ends. And you would think that henceforth his name would be Israel. Have you ever heard of Jacob? We literally refer to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. What's going on? Why are we going back to the old name? Doesn't make any sense. Imagine if people would still talk about the Atlanta Thrashers. Yeah, I don't care where they went. They call them the Thrashers. The Thrashers, they don't exist. I don't know. To me, they do. Who's Jacob? Who are we talking about here? Jacob doesn't exist. His name was changed. So let's get into the back inside. Let's get back inside. Okay. So the name was changed. I'm going to read that verse again. It's in the italics, or that verse, yeah? "Your name shall no longer be called Yaakov, Jacob, but Yisrael, Israel, for you have striven." Now let's continue inside. Rashi, the primary biblical commentary, comments that this was, "So it shall not be said that by means of cunning, akev, and deceit, he obtained the blessings, but rather in the manner of a minister, sar, or nobleman." So Jacob, Jacob, the Hebrew is Yaakov, could also be read as, or comes from the word etymologically, akev. Akev means heel. Akev also means cunning and deceit. Is that used in modern Hebrew at all? Akev, not really. Does it have that connotation at all? Could. I mean, I know in like wrestling, not real wrestling, in fake wrestling, the villain is always called the heel. I'm not wrong, right? The villain is called the heel. He's the guy that turns on the other guy. He's the guy that's deceptive. The heel is the guy who used to be part of the team and then goes to the dark side, and then as the match is going, comes in and tases the other guy. I'm not saying this is of any value. I'm just saying this is what happens, right? The heel is the guy that turns on the other guy, the deception guy.
You're saying it's fake?
It's staged, not fake.
Oh, that is true. It's staged, not fake. That's true, right? They really get it. They really do get hurt. That is true. That is true. Thank you. Right. That is an important, very important. Yes. I just went down a rabbit hole reading about Goldberg, the Jewish one. Goldberg. Unbelievable. Bill Goldberg. So count it. No kidding. So the heel is cunning, it's deceit, it's deception. So his very name, Yaakov's name, the Hebrew name, had a connotation of somehow some underhandedness. So God says no longer Yaakov, but rather Yisrael. Yisrael, Israel, is related to the word sar. Sar means minister. Sar is what? President? Minister? Minister. Yeah. Sar is minister. Nobleman. It means someone who deserves it, not someone who undercut and got it, but someone who deserves it. You defeated Esau's angel. You earned the blessing. You got it. You earned the belt. Fair and square, right? This was a non-stage match, and he won. So now no longer is he called the heel. He's now called the Sar. No longer Yaakov. Now he's Yisrael.
Is it true that Israel means like straight to God, like wrestle with God, something like that?
So Yisrael could have many, many meanings.
Okay.
So like Yashar could mean straight, and Kel is God's name. Wrestling, though, no. Wrestling would be the Yaakov one. Oh, Kisarisa lakim atuchal. You wrestled with, yeah. It also, right, the Torah says that there's some sort of wrestling connotation.
Which goes back to the heel.
But no. But in this case, no. But in this case, it doesn't mean the underhanded way. It means you wrestle and you actually won, meaning you earned it. Now, let's go to the next page. Okay, we're taking this step by step. Let's go to page 30. Nevertheless, and this is something that is a little bit shocking. The name Jacob was never removed completely. As the Talmud states, the Torah itself reverts to using the name Jacob. As in the verse, God spoke to Israel in a night vision and said, Jacob, Jacob. Okay, so here's what's going on here. To understand this, I'm going to pass around the next handout. Okay, I put this together specifically for this class and for some of the pieces that are quoted in this lesson. I hope you have enough copies. Please take and pass, and please take and pass. Okay, I'm going to also share this online, so just hold on. This is coming soon. Let's see. Okay. All right, so there's 3 pieces on this sheet, on this handout. We're going to do one at a time as it comes up. So the first one we're going to do is what is titled Names. And you will see it on the very first page where it says Bar Kapara. All right, so I'm going to read this. This comes from Talmud Tractate Brachot, and it's talking about names. And here's what it says. Bar Kapara taught. That was one of the Talmudic sages. Anyone who calls Abraham, Abram, or in Hebrew, anyone who calls Avraham, Avram, which was his original name, transgresses a positive mitzvah, as it is stated, and your name will be Abraham, meaning once God makes the name change, your new name is Abraham. We have no permission to revert back to the old name. Doing so is, I don't know, chutzpah. It's an affront, and it's a violation of a positive mitzvah. God says your new name is Avraham, Abraham, with the extra H or Hey. And so if you go back to the original, you're in violation. Rabbi Eliezer says, he takes it a step further. One who calls Abraham, Abram, or Avraham, Avram, transgresses also a negative mitzvah, as it is stated, and your name shall no longer be called Avram. So not only is it a positive mitzvah, i.e. your new name is, but it's also don't call him by his old name. It's no longer Avram. If you call him by his old name, it's violating a positive and a negative mitzvah. Getting 2 violations with 1 stone, as it were. All right, so the Talmud asks, but if that is so, one who calls Jacob, about whom it is written, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, should also transgress a mitzvah. So how come we don't find the same thing by Jacob? That if you refer to Jacob as Jacob, that you're in violation, because God says your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. So the Talmud answers it's different there. With Jacob, we have something different. Why? As the verse itself reverts back, as it is written, and God said to Israel in the visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob, which means that even after God gave the new name, God himself used the old name, and therefore we can use both. Does that make sense? When it comes to Avraham, once God changed the name, the Torah and God, they don't go back. So therefore, if you and I go back, that's a violation. But when it comes to Jacob becoming Israel, or Yaakov becoming Israel in the Hebrew, since the Torah itself, Scripture itself, God himself reverts back and goes back and forth in the same verse. Look at that verse. It's weird. And God said to Israel in the visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. Can you make up your mind? God said to Yisrael, Yaakov, Yaakov. Like pizza. Kidding, huh?
Where they're like, well, God can do this, but you cannot.
No, the Talmud says the fact that scripture itself flips back and forth means that it's not such a solid divide between the past and between the old name and the new name. So if God goes back and forth, we go back and forth. If scripture goes back and forth, it's fine for us to do so. It's not a violation. That's how the Talmud answers. But you know what the Talmud doesn't answer? Why? Why does God go back and forth? That's the question I got. Now you might say, well, who are we to question God? I don't know. Try us. We're doing it right now. What is this? What is the conceptual reason? Why when it comes to Avram and Avraham, Abram and Abraham, oh, no one goes back. But when it comes to Yaakov and Yisrael, Jacob and Israel, even God goes back and forth. Why? In other words, all the Talmud is saying is, well, we have scriptural precedents, so it's cool. But why? Why is there a difference? Why, when God says your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but rather Israel, why is it that God himself reverts back? Doesn't make any sense. Didn't he say your name is no longer Jacob, but Israel? And then he calls him Jacob? Why? Yeah.
Does the Talmud refer to any of the other name changes that happened, like for Sarah and Sarai and Moshe, Yeshua, and so on?
It refers to Sarai. I cut that out.
That's referred to her as well. You're not.
It asks the question. No, it asks the question, what about her?
Huh?
And it says that it's fine. Why? Because I'm trying to remember why. I literally cut it out of the Talmud. Maybe I still have it on my browser. I probably don't. Okay, we have to look it up. Yeah, the Talmud discusses Sarai. As far as Yehoshua, Joshua, Hosea, and Yehoshua, I don't know if the Talmud there speaks about it. It's a quick Google search. We'll look at it right after the class. Okay, so that is the Talmud. But again, it answers a question, but it raises another question. The question that it answers is, how come we refer to Jacob as Jacob and not exclusively Israel? The answer is because God uses both. But now the question is, why does God use both? If he changed the name, he changed the name. Why is he flipping back and forth? And so the answer that the mystics give, and it's an amazing answer, is that a name is not just a name. It's not random. A name means something. Like Avram and Avraham, they mean something. We had a class about that months ago on a Tuesday night. Avram means the father of Ram, the father of a nation. Avraham means the father of many nations. So once he's the father of many nations, you don't say he's a father of one nation. That's actually a diss. That's actually not nice. A father of one nation. No, Avraham is an Avhamon Goim. He's a father of many nations. Not just one. Not just the Av, not just the father of Aram Naharaim. One nation. He's a father of many. Okay. But when it comes to Yaakov and Yisrael, the reason why God goes back and forth is because the meaning of both names are still important. Sometimes you got to go in like a boss. And sometimes you got to go in with a little treachery. That's the message. Sometimes you got to go into a situation like you own it. Sometimes you're going to need to be the heel. Yaakov, the modality of life as a Yaakov doesn't go away. So now with this in mind, we need to address another question. And this other question is, why is it that in general, Yaakov, Jacob, got the blessings in a manner of treachery in the first place? Right? How did he get the blessings? He dressed up like his brother, right? He went into his father who was blind, who couldn't see. And he says, here I am. Is this my son, Esau? Yes. He says, yes. And then he proceeds to give him the food that he asked, Esau to bring. And he proceeds to take the blessings. And who orchestrated the whole ruse? His mother, Rebecca. Question is, what's going on here? Hold on. If Rebecca wants Jacob to get the blessings, have a conversation with your husband. Talk about it. Say, hey, I don't think that Esau deserves the blessings. Maybe you can't see, but he's not such a good kid anymore. He doesn't deserve the blessings. He's the firstborn, but you know what? He's kind of lost his way. And if Isaac, the father, still believes that his son Esau should get the blessings, well, then again, have that conversation, make a decision. What's this whole idea of her going behind her husband's back, setting up the child to go behind his father's back, dressing up with what's happening here? Why go like a heel if you can go like a boss? Doesn't make sense. In other words, we said before that the name Israel connotes that finally Jacob, Israel, earned the blessings, not like underhand. So then why in the first place did he get it like that? So that's what the discourse proceeds to ask. So let's read this inside, back inside the main text, the main discourse text, page 30, second paragraph. This implies there's the very fact that Jacob remains a name in use. We don't exclusively use the name Israel and toss the name Jacob. We use the name Jacob. God used the name Jacob. Torah, scripture, the Bible used the name Jacob even after the name change. This implies that there was an element of cunning, akev, and deceit required in order to obtain the blessings, and that requirement remains even after he has achieved the name Israel. The Jacob persona still remains a necessary persona. Now let's continue inside. Rebekah and Jacob used several cunning methods with which to obtain the blessings. Rebekah dressed Jacob in Esau's favorite clothing and the skins of goats. Jacob said, I am Esau, your firstborn, and the like. Why did the blessings need to be taken by means of deceit? And that is the question that we are ending up with after the section in the text. Why the deceit? So we have a few questions, but that's the final question over here. But let's go through the questions. Question number one, why after the name change do we still refer to Jacob as Jacob? The answer that the Talmud gives, because God does it, that doesn't answer the question. So why did God do it? Why do we do it? Because God did it. Great. So why does God do it? He can't stick with his own new name? What's happening here? So the implication is sometimes a question forces you into an answer. The question forces us into an answer to say that basically when it comes to Jacob as opposed to Abraham, the original name still is a valid form of showing up. It's still a valid archetype and prototype of living. Not only living like a Yisrael, like an Israel, but also living like a Jacob. And this is why the blessings had to come through cunning. We haven't explained it, but we're kind of pointing ourselves in the direction of what will ultimately become the answer. Okay. Now, yes.
Jacob does use cunning again. So he really is.
Where?
When he leaves.
When he leaves Laban's house.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. But that's before the name change. That was before. Yeah. He left Laban's house and then he met up with the angel. They had tea. I'm kidding. Right. They duked it out and then, yeah. But the focus here mainly is on the deception. You are correct. He leaves in the middle of the night and he just then, yeah. But yeah.
Isn't it sort of like a validation when God continues to call Jacob, that's saying, I change your name to Israel, which is, a great name, but I'm still validating that whatever you've done as Yaakov is fine. It wasn't like, the nations through generation use that passage to say Jews cannot be trusted, they're con artists, whatever agreement they sign is void, because look, this is how they behave.
Right.
And here God says, maybe I'm still calling him Jacob because even whatever he's done and the way he done it was the necessary way to get what he needed.
Right. And that's really what we're going to explore. Not so much in a pragmatic way, but in a spiritual way. Why sometimes the path of deception, why is that sometimes necessary on a spiritual level, not on a physical level, not in business or anything like that, but on a spiritual level, why is deception so important? That's really what we're getting into. And that would be why God goes back to Jacob. So I think what you're saying is aligned with this text, is that God is validating the original name, also saying, even after you got the new name, the original name is still valid. And there will be some times that you will have to revert back to Jacob. I mean, think about like a few weeks ago, last week, we read the Torah portion of Balak, and we had Bilam's the prophet Balaam or Balaam, his attempted curse of the Jewish people. Every time he gets up there, he uses both names. Matov O'alecha Yaakov, Mishkanotecha Yisrael. Right? He uses both names, Yaakov and Yisrael. Every time he talks about the Jewish people, he's covering both bases. Maybe he can get a curse in here, maybe he get a curse in there. But clearly, the names are both used. It's interesting because I think most times when we refer to the patriarch himself, we refer to him as Jacob. But when we refer to kind of the progeny, Bnei Yisrael, right? Children of Israel. It's interesting. But both are in continued use. And the goal, one of the objectives of this discourse is to get to the spiritual truth behind both names, and when we need to kind of utilize the name Yaakov as well.
They're allowed to lie.
We're one second. The lesson is not we're allowed to lie, cheat, and steal. I think that's no. The lesson, we're going to get to a spiritual application of this, not a practical application. These are not even real bagels. They are real bagels. Okay. All right, let's. Yes.
Is the Hebrew verbiage the same when Jacob's name is changed and also when Abraham's name was changed?
You mean like the name, like you shall no longer be called, whatever, like that? It's very close. We have to look up the exact original in the Hebrew. It's very close, which makes it weird that God would renege on that. You shall no longer. I mean, if God says it, like, I'm no longer calling you Jacob, and he's like, Jacob, can you come here for a second? What are you saying? It's so weird. The Talmud, it's kind of funny. Because the Talmud says, oh, we're allowed to do it because God did it. But it doesn't like dig a little bit deeper and say, well, why does God do it? That's where Kabbalah comes in.
It kind of reminds me of like my mom will like always call me by my middle name, Alex. Like she'll never call me by like my first name, Ramon. So it kind of like, and then she'll like, she'll like switch back and forth depending on the situation.
Just keeping you off balance.
Right, so maybe it's a little bit like, well, you're my child. I can pretty much call you whatever. I gave you Jacob as well.
Right, but with that, yeah. Okay. Now let's get into the deeper concept or the deeper drama regarding the incident of the blessings altogether. In other words, at the core of it, at the core of this deceit is the episode or the incident where Jacob takes the blessings that were earmarked for his older brother. The question is, what was going on over there? Why did Isaac, the father, wish to give the blessings to his son Esau if Esau was such a bad character in the first place? Why did Rebekah revert to deceit and deception in order to get her younger son, Jacob, the blessing? So we need to explore all of this. So let's continue inside. Isaac's mistaken surmise. Wow. Okay. Isaac wished to bless Esau, even though he knew that Esau did not measure up. Now, that line, that opening line of the bottom of page 30 is a hot take, because there are some commentaries that say he didn't know. He was blind at that point, and his son Esau pretended that he was this, really righteous dude. He would come to his father, the commentaries say, how does one tithe salt? Count each grain, a tenth of each grain. I mean, like, granule of salt. So he put on the facade or the charade of being so righteous and whatever. And he also even legitimately took care of his father. One of the Talmudic sages said, we can learn from Esau how to honor, fulfill the mitzvah of honoring one's parents. Because
Always bothered me that question, like when Abraham had, Isaac and Ishmael, God specifically told him, bless this is going to be your continuation.
Yeah.
Like, was God not appearing to Isaac anymore and said to him, there you have two sons, bless this will continue your heritage?
It seems like not. It seems like he was a little bit kind of like flying on his own.
The connection wasn't.
I don't know. The channel was coming in fuzzy. He believed, but we're about to explain this mystically, what his intention was. Your question is, how come God didn't clarify? I don't know. That's a good question. But according to this, even though some commentators want to say that Isaac didn't know the extent of Esau's wickedness, according to Kabbalah, he did. And he still wanted to bless him. Why? Let's continue. He saw that Esau possessed very holy nitzotzot. What are nitzotzot? Sparks. Very holy potential. Meaning, he recognized that Esau, as he was living his life, was on a lowly level, but he also saw within him the greatest spiritual potential. You know, sometimes you see, I don't know, you see someone who maybe is struggling with whatever, but you know they have such a powerful soul or sensitive soul. Maybe it's because of that they're struggling. Maybe because of the spiritual sensitivity, because of the power, that's why they're struggling. So this is what Isaac saw. Isaac saw that his son Esau, the older son, possessed very holy nitzotzot, in fact, an even greater spiritual potential than Jacob. And let's continue inside. He wanted to elicit a spiritual light to shine upon him, which would automatically gather these nitzotzot. I need to give you an example. Maybe he gives the example inside in a second. Yeah, he will give the example, but I'll just share it outside. So, and Kabbalah uses this concept frequently, this idea that when you have a large fire and you put a small candle near the large fire, it's almost like the flame of the small fire will jump to the large fire. So if you have a bonfire and then you hold a candle, you'll see like the flame of the candle like leaning into try to become absorbed within the greater light. The nature of light, or the nature of fire specifically, is such that it always seeks to undo itself. This is something that I've shared many, many times, but I'll just do it again very quickly. Most things in creation, physical things, they want to assert their being or their ego or their isness. Fire wants to do the opposite. Fire struggles with being. Fire does not want to be. In fact, what does fire do? It burns itself to the point that it burns itself out of existence. And that's its end goal. Its end goal is to not be. So that's why to create fire, you have to force it into being. Fire is not around. You have to strike it into being. What other thing? You have to strike it. You have to force it. You have to whack it into being. Yeah, just like physically force fire into being. And then fire doesn't want to be here. So what do? Right? You just have a spark. Oh, hold on. Let me get something. Let me get a piece of paper on it. And then it's going to, but then what is it? Then it destroys the paper and then destroys itself. It doesn't want to be here. That's why it destroys whatever you put to it. It creates the condition that it itself wants, which is non-being, not to be here. So you put fire on a piece of wood, destroys the wood. Wow, fire's so destructive. Not really. Fire is really self-destructive. Fire itself doesn't want to be here, but you put it to wood, and now the wood's holding on to it. So it's going to first have to destroy the wood, and then it can undo itself. It's not a negative nature. It's rather a bit more spiritual nature. Everything else that's created physically wants to assert its physicality or its independence from source. Fire wants to go back to the source. That's why fire and or light is a euphemism for spirituality. That's why King Solomon writes, Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam, right? The soul of man, the soul of the human being is a candle of God. The soul is likened to fire. The soul also doesn't want to be here to a certain extent. It's the body that holds it back, right? It's the body. It's the physical condition that holds it down. And I'm not saying the soul burns the body until it can leave, but there is some tension there. There is some tension there. There's a lot of tension. And there are some cases, like we read in the Torah about Nadav and Avihu, the sons of Aaron. There are some cases where a soul gets its wish and just jumps out of the body. The sons of Aaron, on the day of the dedication, they offered a fire offering that was not required of them. And what happened? Their souls leapt from their bodies. They got too close to the light, and the soul, like we're saying here, leapt. So what did Isaac want to do? Isaac wanted to, if we move this conversation out of the mystical sphere to psychology, here's how we, and I'm not a psychologist, but here's how we might say it. I know, right? Sarah can jump into this. He was trying to love bomb his son. Trying to give him so much love that he would turn things around, right? Here's a kid who's struggling. What if we give him everything, all the attention, all the resources, everything, all the blessings? Maybe he'll get it together. But in a spiritual way, right? He's struggling spiritually. Let's give him all the light, all the energy, all the spiritual forces, and maybe that itself will draw out the potential in him to wake up. Let's continue. Let's continue on the next page. This is going to be page 32. This supernal light would be like a great torch of fire, which, when brought near to a spark, a smaller fire, automatically incorporates the spark within it. That's the analogy. Similarly, by shining a supernal light upon Esau through the blessings that he wanted to give him, Esau's nitzotzot sparks would automatically ascend, and the supernal light would incorporate them. He wanted to. It's almost like, oh man, I'm just thinking of like a random parallel. Maybe you dropped, the proverbial needle in a haystack and you can't find it. But what if you had this huge magnet, but like this really, really, really powerful magnet, and you could hold it over the haystack, and no matter how deeply embedded the needle was, it would pull it out. That's what he wanted to do with his son. He saw in his son so much potential. He didn't want to let go, like a good father. Right? Like a good father, he saw amazing, immense potential, but he also saw his son was lost spiritually. But he didn't want to give up and just say, well, 1 out of 2 ain't bad. What kind of father does that? He was there for his son. He wanted to be there for his son. He wanted to share this immense light, this immense blessing that would somehow, from the recesses, from the forgotten crevices of Esau's soul, pull out the sparks and inspire him. Hold this massive, whatever analogy, magnet, light, power, energy, blessings, whatever word you want to use, something really powerful to get Esau going. That was the intention. So some people say, Isaac, he had no idea who his son was. He made a mistake. He wanted to give him a blessing. Wow, Esau really fooled him. According to Kabbalah, that's not what happened. He knew exactly what was going on. He knew exactly what the score was. He still wanted to give him the blessing. Why? Because he felt like the blessing would inspire him, would wake him up. They have different approaches. Right? Some parents take a very harsh approach. If the kid is not where they wanted the kid to be, they'll be like, oh, tough love, right? Send the kid out, kick the kid out of the house or whatever it is. He did the opposite. He said, what if we keep on giving him love? Eventually he'll turn around. That's what he wanted to do with the blessings. I feel like it's important to share, even though we're not up to there yet, what the other opinion was. That was his wife's opinion. His wife felt that no matter how much you're going to give at this point, he's just going to take it and continue running in the next. Like, oh, if we only gave him more attention and more love and more money, and meanwhile, he's going to spend the money on whatever. Like, this is not going to turn him around. The blessing has to rather go through Jacob, the brother, and the brother can work with him on the ground and try to get him back. But it's not going to go directly through him. It's not going to work. He's going to need someone to work with him. So let the blessings go. Let the energy go to the brother. And then Jacob is going to somehow reconcile, work with Esau to get him back to a better path. But it's not going to happen top down. It's going to happen more with the siblings, more with that kind of sibling interaction. So that was Rebecca's opinion. We still haven't answered why it was done in a way of deceit, but we'll get there in a second. Oh, not in a second. We'll get there at some point. 32 in the middle of the page. I want to do a little bit more and then a little bit more in the other hand. This is the meaning of the verse. God will give to you of the dew of the heavens. I need to explain what this is. This is the verse. V'yitein lecha lekim mital hashamayim mishmane haaretz. This is literally the blessing that Isaac gives to his son that he believes is Esau, that is really Jacob. So if you want to know what he wanted to do, look at what he said. Meaning, if Kabbalistically we said that what he wanted to do is, give him love, give him blessings, give him so much energy that his soul sparks would just become awakened automatically, like a spark in a torch. Well, then is that reflected in the words that he said in the blessing that he thought was going to Esau? The answer is yes. Because what does he say? V'yitein lecha lekim mital hashamayim. God will give to you of the dew of the heavens. Why dew? Why mital hashamayim? Let's continue. This refers to the dew that drips from atik yomin. Okay, now we're getting Kabbalistic, which is also called the dew that gives life, the dew that will resurrect the dead in the future. So now we have a lot of concepts in that one paragraph, and that's the last paragraph that we're going to read in this text. We're going to go read a little bit in the other text, but let's talk about dew for a second. There's two things that are contrasted in Kabbalah: rain and dew. I don't think many of us think about dew. Who thinks about, like, what's dew?
Playing golf.
You
Golf.
do. Why? Because it's what? Because the grass?
In rain,
Yeah.
It's on the grass.
So it slows down.
It just interacts with the ball and I hit it.
So you're thinking about it. Later on in the day, though, it burns off, dries out. Okay, that's very good. So there's a golf impact as a word. That's good. Top golf, no. We're in the clear. Top golf, it's you got the little T and you're good to go. All right. So dew and rain, what's the difference? I'm going to give you a crash course in the Kabbalah of dew and rain. So it says like this: how it's reflected scientifically, I don't know that I know, but here's what Kabbalah says. Rain is part of the cycle, and typically rain is produced of water on Earth evaporating, right? Evaporation, condensation, precipitation. I might have missed one, but here we go, right? It evaporates, it condensates, and then it precipitates, then it rains. Typically what happens. So what comes down is really what came up. So that reflects the modality of what comes down is commensurate to what comes up. So what comes down is really not like, we're not getting spiritual for a second, even in the physical analogy. It's not something that's from beyond what we can reach. It's what came up is triggering what comes down. Dew, it says, tal lo me'atzer. Tal, dew. So rain, it only rains if there's something that evaporates. But dew, it says God never withholds. Dew always falls. Because dew is coming from a place that's beyond our actions. So rain represents the action-reaction dynamic, meaning God almost responding to our initiation. So we initiate and God responds. That's the rain modality. Dew is God initiating without our initiation. It's coming from a much higher level. Therefore, it says that it's dew that is the euphemism, but dew is that which will be used for the resurrection of the dead. It's one of the primary fundamental Jewish beliefs that in the future, in the Messianic era, there's also going to be the resurrection of the dead. You might have seen a few movies about that. I'm kidding. So, for resurrection of the dead. So, how's that going to happen? So, it's tal shel tchiyah. It's the dew of the resurrection. It's the dew is going to, however that works. Who would have thought that's what Mountain Dew was doing all along? Joking. Okay. So why? Because it's coming from an incredibly high source. As you saw there, it says Atik Yomin. That's like one of the highest spiritual sources. That's where the dew comes from. And that's why it can resurrect. I guess on a simple level, dew is like moisture. And so if you think about the valley of dry bones, right? The Ezekiel's famous prophecy about the dry bones. And God says, do you think I can make these bones live? And the prophet wisely says, probably. I would be foolish for saying no to God. If God's like about to flex, do you think I could do this? The answer is probably, I bet you can. I'm voting. I got my dollar on God. Right? God can pull this off. So anyway, the point is that the dew, tal shel tchiyah, is what will be utilized in the resurrection of the dead. Now take a look at where we find this also in the Talmud. So now back to the other sheets that I prepared, and I think very appropriately, there's a section called dew right there on the first page. So take a look-see at that. I will also pull it up over here on the computer. Can I pull it up on the computer? Does it exist? These and more questions will be answered soon. Hold on one second. Dew. I can't, for some reason, Zoom is not finding it. I hit share. They're like, oh, we don't know what you're talking about. Sorry, I'm being gaslit by Zoom. Can you imagine? Unbelievable. All right, You ready? Rabbi Shubin Levi said, oh, okay. So context here is Sinai. A revelation at Sinai, the Ten Commandments, the transmission of Torah at Sinai from God to the Jewish people. Rabbi Shubin Levi said, from each and every utterance, meaning of the Ten Commandments, that emerged from the mouth of the Holy One, blessed be He, the souls of the Jewish people left their bodies. Can you imagine? Talk about an experience. Every dibur parcha nishmata. Their souls flew out. As it is stated from Song of Songs, my soul departed when he spoke. And since their souls left their bodies from the first utterance, says the Talmud, asked the Talmud, how did they receive the second utterance? It's a good question. I mean, with every utterance, they essentially died. So how was there a second utterance? How are they around for the second utterance? What does that mean? Like, first utterance. And then God's like, where's my crowd? You blew everyone away. So what happened? So answers the Talmud. God rained the dew upon them that in the future will revive the dead. And he revived them. As it is stated, a bountiful rain you will pour down, God. Meaning, not pouring down God, but God you will pour down, right? Meaning in the future time. When your inheritance was weary at Sinai, you sustained it with that very same, well, it says rain, but it means in this context it's dew, and that's from the verse, that's from a verse in Psalms. So what's the point? Says the Talmud. The Talmud says that the dew is reserved for the future to kind of, bring back those that have passed on. But it was also used, once upon a time, it was used at Sinai to bring us back after every one of the 10 commandments. You imagine? It's a lot of dew. You get to. All right. Now, I did one more quote, which I love, and it makes sense to, I know we're at the time, but very, very quickly. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but this is the third citation that I brought here is from another piece of Talmud, Trate Chagiga. And here it talks about the 7 heavens or 7 firmaments, right? We know that God created heaven and earth, right? In the beginning, God created heaven and earth, and we have the Rakia Shemaima. The Rakia is the firmament. Well, says the Talmud, there are 7 firmaments. Rish Lakish said, I'm going to read this inside. There are 7 firmaments, and they are as follows: Vilon, Rakia, Shechakim, Zavul, Ma'on, Machon, and Aravot. Vilon, curtain, is the firmament that does not contain anything, but enters at morning and departs in the evening, and renews the act of creation daily. As it is stated, who stretched out the heavens as a curtain of Vilon and spreads them out as a tent to dwell in. Rakia, firmament, is the one in which the sun, moon, stars, and zodiac signs are fixed. As it is stated, God set them in the firmament, Rakia of the heaven. Shechakim, heights, is the one in which mills stand and grind manna for the righteous. As it is stated, and he commanded the heights, Shechakim, above, and opened the doors of heaven. He caused manna to rain upon them for food, and gave them of the corn of heaven. Psalms. Zvul Abod is the location of the heavenly Jerusalem and the heavenly temple. I spoke about that yesterday, how there's a spiritual parallel above the physical versions. And there the heavenly altar is built, and the angel Michael, the great minister, stands and sacrifices an offering upon it. And let's skip the source text because in the interest of time. Ma'on, habitation, is where there are groups of ministering angels who recite song at night and are silent during the day, out of respect for Israel, in order not to compete with their songs. Okay. Machon, next, dwelling place, is where there are storehouses of snow and storehouses of hail. Interesting. And the upper chamber of harmful dews, and the upper chamber of drops, and the room of tempests and storms, and the cave of mist. That's my new novel, The Cave of Mist. Sounds wonderful. And the doors of all these are made of fire. All right, let's continue. Aravot. Skies is the firmament that contains righteousness, justice, charity, treasuries of life, treasuries of peace, treasuries of blessing, the souls of the righteous, the spirits and souls that are to be created, and the dew that the Holy One, blessed be He, will use to revive the dead. So in case you're wondering where that dew is, it's in Aravot. Right off the 285. A lot of traffic on the 285, but nonetheless, Aravot. Yep. Last paragraph. There in the firmaments are the Ophanim, the Seraphim, the holy divine creatures, the ministering angels, and the throne of glory. That's from the Talmud. Obviously, this itself would require many classes to unpack, but the point is, this is a reference to the dew. So there is this concept called the supernal dew, this tal shaltchia, this dew of resurrection, this dew that will resurrect the dead, this dew that has resurrected the dead in the past at Sinai. And this is the dimension, or a similar dimension at least, that Isaac wished to bless his son Esau with. V'yitein lecha Elokim mital hashamayim. He said in his blessing, which went to Jacob, but he thought was going to go to Esau, may God give you from the dew of the heavens. And what does that mean? He wanted to quite literally bless him, that God should bless him with that dew that would revive the dead. Isn't that exactly what he wanted to do with his son? His son was living a life spiritually of death, meaning he wasn't living life spiritually the way he should. And what did he want to do? He wanted to give him a blast of energy that would awaken him. Isn't that exactly what the dew is for? That's why. So you can see from the blessing what he wanted to accomplish. He wasn't under some sort of spell of his son. He wasn't being fooled by his son. He knew exactly what was going on, and he knew that his son needed love and light and dew and life to be resurrected. That's what he wanted to do. His wife Rebecca agreed to a certain extent, but disagreed to a certain extent, said it's not going to work by giving him, directly these energies. We got to go through Jacob getting the stuff. And she did so in a way of deceit, which we haven't yet explored. But this is the beginnings of understanding kind of the dynamics that were at play on a mystical level. We'll pause here. We'll pause here for right now. But any questions or comments? Any questions?
Pray for dew or rain?
For both.
So why do we pray for dew if it's gonna
Oh,
happen
good.
anyway?
Good. Good question. We don't ask for dew. We ask for rain, but we reference that God is the one who makes the dew happen. So there's a difference. So when it comes to rain, we say, what do we say? We say tal. Same talu matal bracha.
And then
The same bracha. We don't say tal. The same bracha. At least Chabad. So in the winter, we say, so first of all, in the beginning of the Amidah, we say, as we're talking about God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we say, he is the one who is Morid Hatal, the one who brings. So we're not asking for it. We're saying God is the one from which dew emanates. And in the winter, we say, Morid Hagashem, he's the one who gives the rain. But then later on, when we ask for the blessing, so later on in the Amidah, we say and give a saying tal umatar levracha, give dew and rain for blessing. We say that in the winter, and in the summer we say v'sein v'tein bracha and give blessing. So maybe it's the tal should be for a blessing, the dew should be for a blessing. I don't know, but it's not something that's initiated by us, even though we're mentioning it. It's something that comes from above. Maybe we're asking that it should only hit in the appropriate ways, etc. That's a good question.
Is dew more precious than rain in that sense?
So spiritually, mystically, yes, dew represents, it's coming from a much higher level. Rain is coming from a level that we can reach, that we can trigger. So we trigger it and then it comes down. Dew is coming from a place that our efforts, positive or negative, can't touch. It's almost like it's like deeper. It's like kind of behind the firewall that we can't affect, positive or negative. Right. But it comes on its own. It says that the manna from heaven in ancient times, it fell between two layers of dew. There was a layer of dew beneath it, and then the manna, and then a layer of dew above it, and it was like almost sandwich layer of dew.
And so the purpose of dew is resurrection, or is there another like purpose to?
Well, physically, it's I don't know, whatever physically it is, but the spiritual connotation is that seems like that's what it's for. But I'm not saying when it falls in the morning on the grass, that's what it's for, resurrection of the dead. But the spiritual connotation of dew is that, and that's what the blessing was for. The idea of resurrecting, the idea of bring his son back to life, as it were, spiritually. But again, we're right at the beginning of this drama, so we're not done yet. So what's the moral of the story? So I think the moral of the story can be as follows. Number one, the power of names. Right? We spoke about how names are significant, especially Hebrew. Names are significant, not only in their not only in the name of the name altogether, but each individual letter in Hebrew certainly has an energy, has a power in its meaning, in its shape, in its numerology. So that's one point. Adam named all the animals because he was able to see and channel the energy of the soul to the body. And so our names are significant, and it's the names that kind of can revive us. In addition, we spoke about the drama that exists or the tension that exists between the names Jacob and Israel, how one represents this idea of kind of deceit and duplicity, whereas the other one represents kind of confidence and maybe even ownership on a certain level, and how both names remain in use even after the name change, because both are messages for us. And then for the last part of the class, we focused on why is it that had to happen through deceit. We haven't answered that question, but we did explain the motive of the father of Isaac wanting to give the blessings, and really strong blessings, to Esau, even though given the condition that he was in, the spiritual condition he was in. And it was because he wanted to precisely hit him with a lot of light to kind of stir him from his spiritual slumber. So that's what we covered today. So what's the takeaway? What's the moral of the story? Number one, appreciate your name. Number two, I'm not going to give a message of deceit here. Number two, although like the ultimate answer is going to be the value of that for within our own selves, but I don't want to jump to that. But I think number three is the idea that, like Isaac, we should never lose hope in someone else. We should never lose hope that someone's too far gone. We should always seek their betterment, seek their well-being, and do anything in our power to give them what they need to lift themselves up. Requires a dew of resurrection. I know a guy. All right. That's it for today. Thank you. And David, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Yom Huladet Sameach. Yom Huladet Sameach. Yom Huladet Sameach. Yom Huladet Sameach. Yeah, we're actually a professionally trained choir, and the first album is going to be released for the holidays. We'll see you. See you then.
You had already said that they left when I asked the question.
Which one?
Thank you.
Jacob had already left, and
Yeah.
I forgot.
No worries. No worries.
My brain is
It's a complicated timeline. It's all good. Pleasure. Thank you.
I don't know, I have thought. Jacob was old.
Yeah, Isaac.
When Rebecca
Yeah.
did the switch, there was maybe a sense of urgency because husband was old and he was going to die soon. So maybe she felt this was like last chance saloon,
Right.
After all, Jacob had already proven himself to be the worthy one.
That's what I think.
Take a chance.
Right. If we got one shot here, why waste it potentially on
May not even have been.
Ronnie? Good to see you, Jack. Good to see you. We'll close that out.